Kingdom Hearts. When Kingdom Hearts dropped in 2002, nobody knew what to expect. It sounded wild. Disney characters like Donald Duck and Goofy teaming up with original Square Enix heroes in a sprawling RPG. But instead of being a gimmick, it became one of the most beloved experiences on the PlayStation 2. Players stepped into the shoes of Sora, a kid armed with the iconic Keyblade, traveling across worlds inspired by Disney classics, everything from Aladdin to The Nightmare Before Christmas. What made Kingdom Hearts stand out wasn't just the crossover novelty, it was how seamlessly it blended Square Enix's knack for dramatic storytelling and flashy combat with the charm of Disney's universes. The battle system was fast, fluid, and approachable, a nice contrast to the turn-based style of Final Fantasy. And the story, filled with themes of friendship, loss, and light versus darkness, resonated with players far more than anyone expected. Critics praised it for its creativity, its jaw-dropping visuals for the time, and a soundtrack led by Yoko Shimomura that still gives fans chills. What could have been a one-off experiment ended up building an entire franchise with sequels, spin-offs, and a fanbase that stayed loyal for decades. Devil May Cry. In 2001, Devil May Cry practically invented a new genre. Originally conceived as a prototype for Resident Evil 4, the project took a sharp turn when the vision became too fast-paced and stylish for survival horror. The result was a completely fresh experience, the birth of stylish action. You played as Dante, a half-human, half-demon with an attitude and an arsenal of swords, guns, and over-the-top combos that felt straight out of an anime fight scene. The game wasn't just about beating enemies, it was about how you beat them. Devil May Cry introduced a grading system that rewarded players for stringing together creative, flashy attacks without taking damage, turning every encounter into a performance. That style over substance idea redefined action games for the next 2 decades. The Gothic castle setting, eerie atmosphere, and moody soundtrack gave it a distinct identity, blending horror aesthetics with high-octane combat. Critics praised its precision controls, inventive enemy design, and how it pushed the PS2 hardware to deliver fast, fluid action. What started as a happy accident became one of the most influential franchises in gaming, setting the standard for hack-and-slash titles that followed. Ico. Ico wasn't a blockbuster in sales when it launched in 2001, but it became one of the most celebrated works of art on the PlayStation 2. It told a minimalistic story about a boy born with horns who's abandoned in a mysterious castle. There, he meets Yorda, a fragile girl he must protect and guide to freedom. On the surface, it's a puzzle platformer, but its quiet elegance made it unforgettable. Unlike most games of the era, Ico stripped away traditional tutorials and constant action. Instead, it emphasized atmosphere, light, and silence. The game's haunting architecture, cinematic camera angles, and use of natural lighting gave it a specific quality that critics and players alike compared to fine art. Its focus on holding Yorda's hand turned into one of the most emotional connections players had ever felt in a game. Though it didn't break sales records, its influence was massive. Ico proved that games could be subtle, poetic, and emotionally resonant without bombastic cutscenes or heavy exposition. It laid the groundwork for spiritual successors and inspired an entire generation of developers to approach game design as art. If you've enjoyed the video so far, leave a like and subscribe for more video game explainer videos. Final Fantasy X. When Final Fantasy X hit the PlayStation 2 in 2001, it marked a huge leap forward for the series and for JRPGs as a whole. It was the first Final Fantasy to feature full 3D environments, voice acting, and cinematic cutscenes, pushing the PS2 hardware to deliver an epic movie-like experience. Players followed Tidus, a star mysteriously transported to the world of Spyro, where he joins Yuna and her guardians on a journey to defeat the monstrous Sin. The game's turn-based combat lets players see the turn order and strategically swap party members mid-fight. It balanced depth with accessibility, making it one of the most polished systems in the series. The spheric grid leveling system also gave players near-complete control over character growth, a feature fans spent countless hours mastering. But what really elevated Final Fantasy X was its emotional storytelling. The romance between Tidus and Yuna, the themes of sacrifice and faith, and that unforgettable ending cemented it as one of the most moving entries in the franchise. Critics praised its visuals and its ambition. For many fans, it was an experience that defined the PS2 era. God of War. By 2005, the PlayStation 2 was already stacked with legendary titles, but God of War carved out its own space by delivering pure, brutal spectacle. Players stepped into the role of Kratos, a Spartan warrior consumed by rage and betrayal, on a quest to slay Ares, the Greek god of war. What set this game apart was its unapologetic violence paired with cinematic storytelling, something rarely executed with this level of polish at the time. From the opening Hydra battle on a stormy ship, God of War made its intentions clear. Massive set pieces, fluid hack-and-slash combat, and a mythological scale that felt larger than life. The Blades of Chaos, chained to Kratos' arms, became iconic weapons, letting players unleash devastating combos while still feeling in control. It wasn't just a button masher. The game wove in puzzles, platforming, and lore-rich exploration, keeping the pacing sharp. Critics praised the combat system, orchestral soundtrack, and Kratos' anti-hero arc, which introduced one of gaming's most recognizable faces. God of War kicked off a franchise that would span decades, reinvent itself on later consoles, and remain a crown jewel of PlayStation's identity. On PS2, it was nothing short of a revolution. Silent Hill 2. If Resident Evil defined survival horror through action, Silent Hill 2 defined it through psychology. Released in 2001, it was a deeply unsettling exploration of guilt, grief, and the human mind. You played as James Sunderland, who receives a mysterious letter from his late wife, drawing him into the fog-drenched town of Silent Hill. What followed wasn't just about monsters, but about James's own torture. The game's atmosphere was its real weapon. With the oppressive fog and dim lighting, Silent Hill 2 created a mood that lingered long after you turned off the console. Enemies like Pyramid Head weren't just terrifying, they were a symbolic reflection of James' inner torment. That blending of horror with storytelling depth was ahead of its time. While the combat and controls were deliberately clunky to heighten vulnerability, the narrative earned universal acclaim. Critics hailed it as one of the most mature and thought-provoking stories ever told in gaming, proving the medium could rival film and literature in emotional weight. More than 2 decades later, Silent Hill 2 is remembered as one of the greatest horror experiences in history. Resident Evil 4. When Resident Evil 4 hit the PlayStation 2 in late 2005, it was already being hailed as a masterpiece on the GameCube. Its PS2 release brought one of the most influential games of all time to a massive audience, reshaping the entire action genre. You played as Leon S. Kennedy, tasked with rescuing the US president's daughter from a remote European village. What started as a straightforward mission quickly spiraled into a fight against parasites and towering monstrosities. The big innovation was the over-the-shoulder camera and precision aiming, which replaced the fixed angles of earlier games. This single design choice redefined third-person shooters and became the template for countless titles afterward. But it wasn't just mechanics. Resident Evil 4 was relentless in pacing, throwing players from claustrophobic villages to sprawling castles and military facilities, always keeping tension high. Its mix of resource management, cinematic boss fights, and over-the-top action made it endlessly replayable. The PS2 version added exclusive extras like new weapons and the Ada Wong side story, making it the definitive way for many fans to experience the game. For critics and players alike, Resident Evil 4 was a turning point in modern game design. Shadow of the Colossus. Released in 2005 by Team Ico, Shadow of the Colossus was an event that pushed the boundaries of what the medium could be. Instead of dungeons, towns, or countless enemies, the entire experience revolved around one mission, slaying 16 towering colossi scattered across a vast, desolate landscape. You played as Wander, a young warrior willing to defy gods and nature itself to save a girl named Mono. What made Shadow of the Colossus most impressive was its scale. Each Colossus was like a moving mountain, blending puzzle solving with combat as you figured out how to climb their massive bodies and strike their weak points. The music swelled during battles, then fell silent in the lonely stretches of travel, creating an emotional flow that few games could match. The storytelling was minimalist, yet profound. With almost no dialogue, the game conveyed themes of sacrifice and consequence in ways that hit harder than most text-heavy RPGs. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece of atmosphere and design, and its technical achievements on the PS2 hardware were staggering. Even today, Shadow of the Colossus is studied as one of the finest examples of video games as art, inspiring countless developers worldwide. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. In 2004, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater dropped on the PS2 and immediately set a new bar for stealth action storytelling. Instead of continuing Solid Snake's moderate tale, Hideo Kojima took players back to the Cold War, stepping into the boots of Naked Snake, who would one day become the legendary Big Boss. This prequel wasn't just a history lesson, it was one of the most ambitious games ever built on the system. Players had to manage stamina, heal Snake's wounds manually, and adapt camouflage to blend into jungles and swamps. The use of stealth meant using the environment in itself. Boss fights like The End, a sniper duel that could last hours, or The Boss, showed how mechanics and story could work hand in hand. The cinematic presentation, complete with a James Bond-style theme song, cemented MGS3 as a true epic. It's praised for its narrative depth, complex characters, and innovative gameplay. For many fans, it stands as not just the peak of the Metal Gear series, but one of the greatest games ever made. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. By the time Grand Theft Auto San Andreas launched in 2004, Rockstar had already turned the series into a blockbuster hit. But this wasn't just another entry, it was a sprawling epic that redefined open-world gaming. Players took control of CJ, returning to Los Santos after his mother's death, only to get caught in a storm of gang wars, corrupt cops, and a criminal underworld stretching across the entire state of San Andreas. 3 fully realized cities, Los Santos, San Fierro, and Las Venturas, plus deserts, forests, and countryside, made it the biggest sandbox the industry had ever seen. The freedom was staggering. Players could customize CJ's appearance, hit the gym, gamble in casinos, buy property, and even fly jets. Yet beneath all that freedom was a gripping story about family, loyalty, and survival, backed by one of the best licensed soundtracks ever assembled. It had ambition, variety, and detail, while fans spent hundreds of hours discovering secrets hidden across the map. San Andreas became the best-selling game on the console, shaping how open-world games would be designed for decades to come. What was your favorite game on this list? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.